You've done the work. You've read the books, burned the incense, sat on the cushion. You've tried silence, stillness, surrender. And yet, something inside still trembles. Something still aches. There's a restlessness that no breath seems to calm, no mantra seems to dissolve. You ask yourself, why does peace feel like a horizon that keeps shifting? Why, after all this seeking, does it still feel just out of reach? Maybe the answer is not that peace is missing. Maybe it's not about finding something new, but unlearning what we've always assumed, that peace is something to be acquired, achieved, or controlled. But what if peace doesn't come from effort? What if it arrives the moment effort falls away? In today's episode, we're not offering a technique or a quick fix. We're stepping into a deeper inquiry. Why you still can't find inner peace. We'll explore how the very mind that searches for peace might be the one quietly keeping it at bay, and how the stillness you long for may have never truly left. Welcome to Trandy Wisdom, where every story is profoundly true. 1. The illusion of the search, when seeking becomes the obstacle. The desert wind whispered across the worn footprints of countless pilgrims beneath the scorching sun. A solitary figure moved steadily toward the distant horizon, eyes fixed on a point he could not name, chasing something he could not quite grasp. He had crossed borders and languages, consulted teachers and books, meditated under trees and beside oceans, and still, he had not found what he was looking for: inner peace. In the modern world, the search for inner peace has become a pilgrimage of its own kind. People carry it like a silent ache, a longing buried beneath layers of noise and ambition. We think we must go somewhere, retreat to a monastery, hike into the Himalayas, download another app, read another book, fix our past, fix our mind, fix the world. Yet the more we seek, the further peace seems to retreat, like a mirage shimmering over burning sands. The Buddha saw this paradox clearly. Over 2,500 years ago, he sat beneath a Bodhi tree, not to seek, but to stop, not to escape, but to look directly. In the silence of that sitting, he saw that suffering does not arise from the world itself, but from the grasping, the pushing, the endless restlessness of the human mind. And perhaps most subtly, from the belief that peace is something we lack, something separate, something that must be acquired. This, he taught, is tanha, craving, the thirst that fuels the wheel of suffering. Even our craving for peace, for transcendence, becomes a trap. The more we chase it, the more we reinforce the illusion that peace is somewhere else, not already within. Imagine standing before a calm lake. You throw a stone into the water to still it, then another, then a larger one, desperate to bring it under control. All you succeed in doing is stirring more waves. This is what it's like to seek peace with a mind still agitated by seeking. We become, as the Zen koan says, like the man running in circles, trying to catch his shadow. The Buddha's teachings challenge this entire premise. They ask, what if peace isn't something you find, but something you uncover? What if it's not created, but remembered, not reached through effort, but revealed through stillness? In one discourse, the Buddha likened the mind to a deep forest pool, naturally clear when undisturbed. It is not by force, but by ceasing to stir the waters, that clarity appears. The path to peace is not about adding something new, but letting go of what clouds it: attachments, fears, comparisons, even the subtle pride of being a seeker. Many spiritual aspirants fall into what might be called the seeking trap. It's a refined kind of suffering. They trade worldly desires for spiritual ones, wanting to be enlightened, to be pure, to be wise. But the wanting remains. It just wears robes now. And so, they end up chasing spiritual highs, comparing their progress, feeling frustrated when calm doesn't arrive on schedule. Peace becomes another thing to win. But peace doesn't respond to force. It's more like a bird in the hand. Open your palm gently, and it may rest there. Clamp your fist, and it flies away. The Buddha did not say, strive to be peaceful. He said, see clearly, know the impermanent nature of all things, and suffering will cease. It's a radical message, easily overlooked, in a world trained to fix, chase, and optimize. In Buddhist meditation, particularly in insight traditions, the practitioner does not try to become calm. Instead, they observe whatever arises: breath, thought, sensation, irritation, joy with patient attention. They don't pursue a peaceful state. They cultivate awareness. And through this awareness, the mind begins to settle, not because it was forced to, but because it has nothing left to resist. Thich Nhat Hanh often spoke of coming home. This is not a journey in space, but a journey inward. To come home is to return to the present moment, to rest in the breath, the body, the now. You are not trying to go anywhere. You are learning how to be here, without commentary, without running away. Inner peace is not a product of arrival, but of stopping. Stopping is a revolutionary act in today's world. Everything urges us forward: goals, timelines, self-improvement. Even spiritual communities sometimes echo this urgency. You must change. You must awaken. You must evolve. But the deepest transformation often begins when you stop striving altogether and simply allow yourself to be. This doesn't mean complacency. In Buddhism, stopping is not laziness. It is samatha, tranquility, the still ground from which insight arises. When the mind stops chasing, clarity dawns. When the heart stops demanding, it opens. It is the silence that speaks. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, there is no path to peace. Peace is the path. This is not a metaphor. It's a direct instruction. The peace we want is not ahead of us. It is the very fabric of this moment, underneath the noise. But to see it, we must stop moving so fast. Stop adding conditions. Stop demanding the world conform to our ideals. We must sit beneath our own Bodhi tree and listen. Listen not with expectation, but with presence. Listen not to what we want to hear, but to what is. There is a famous story of a man who spent years searching for a sacred scroll that would unlock the mysteries of existence. He climbed mountains, crossed rivers, endured great hardships. One day, in exhaustion, he collapsed by a stream. As he cupped his hands to drink, he noticed something written on the inside of his palm. The sacred text he had longed for had been tattooed there since childhood. He had simply never looked. This is how peace often is. Not absent, but unnoticed. Not missing, but hidden beneath our insistence that something else must happen first. The illusion of the search is that it appears noble. But if we look closely, it often comes from a subtle rejection of the now, a belief that this moment, this self, this breath is not enough. Buddhism asks us to see through that illusion, not by suppressing it, but by watching it gently, until its grip fades. Then, what is left is not some grand revelation, but something profoundly simple. Stillness, not forced, not bought, not earned, just here, like the wind resting between leaves, like the breath resting between thoughts, like the mind resting within itself, no longer seeking. This is the invitation, to let go of the idea that peace is elsewhere, to rest where you are, and to discover, perhaps for the first time, that you have never truly left homes. 2. The noise within. How the mind prevents peace. The silence of dawn has a strange clarity. Long before the traffic awakens, before the phones buzz and the headlines scroll into being, there is a soft hush that settles over the earth. It is in this hour that ancient monks walked barefoot to collect alms, that solitary birds called out to the empty sky, that meditation masters closed their eyes not to escape the world, but to enter it more fully. In this hour, peace seems almost within reach, but even then, when the world quiets, most of us still cannot hear it, because the noise never truly begins outside. It begins inside. Long before a sound reaches the ear, the mind has already started speaking, planning, comparing, judging, worrying, regretting. It spins webs of thoughts, building stories upon memories, expectations upon fears. Even when the body is still, the mind races forward, rehashing the past or rehearsing the future. And so, the greatest obstacle to peace is not the world. It is the world we carry within. In Buddhism, this inner agitation is called vitakka vikara, initial and sustained thought, the constant turning of the mental wheel. While thinking itself is not a sin, unexamined thought becomes a tyrant. It rules the moment, blinds awareness, and drowns the quiet voice of clarity. The Buddha did not ask us to stop thinking, but to see it as it is, arising and passing, not self, impermanent. Only in this recognition can we begin to relate to our thoughts, not from inside their storm, but from the still eye at the center. Imagine a lake in the mountains. When the wind stirs, ripples scatter across its surface. You can no longer see the reflection of the sky. Thoughts are like wind across water. They disturb the mind's clarity. And just like a lake settles, when the wind ceases, the mind too can rest, if we stop feeding the gusts. But few of us realize how much we do feed them. We entertain endless dialogues in our heads. What we should have said, what might happen next, what others think of us, who we wish to become. And often, the loudest thoughts are not neutral. They are self-critical, anxious, restless. They narrate our lives with a voice that never pauses, one that whispers, "You're not enough. You should be somewhere else. You must fix this now." It is this voice that prevents peace, not because it is evil, but because it is unquestioned. In the practice of Buddhist meditation, one of the first steps is simply to sit and notice, to witness the river of thought without diving into it. At first, this is uncomfortable. The mind seems louder than ever. You notice how it leaps from branch to branch, like a monkey in heat, never pausing long enough to see clearly. But with time, you begin to see patterns, the same thoughts, the same fears, the same habits returning like old ghosts. And slowly, something shifts. You stop believing everything your mind says. This is the beginning of freedom. The Buddha likened the untrained mind to a wild elephant, trampling everything in its path. But with mindfulness, that same elephant can be calmed, directed, even revered. It is not about destroying the mind, but transforming the relationship to it, from identification to observation. In this light, thoughts are no longer enemies. They are clouds, passing, changing, not solid. You watch them rise, peak, and fade, And in the spaces between them, something unexpected appears. Stillness. Not a silence born from absence, but from intimacy. You begin to hear the breath again, the rustle of leaves, the sound of your own heart, not as metaphor, but as rhythm. And you realize that peace was never far away. It was always just beyond the static. One of the most powerful teachings in Buddhism is that suffering is not caused by events, but by our reaction to them. Two people can lose a job, yet only one spirals into despair. Two people can hear criticism, yet only one feels crushed. The difference lies not in circumstance, but in the inner dialogue that follows. When the mind is noisy, even joy is drowned out. We may be surrounded by beauty, sunlight on skin, laughter in a room, the smile of a stranger, but miss it entirely because we are too busy thinking. But when the mind is quiet, even ordinary moments become luminous. There is a Zen saying, when the mind is silent, the flowers speak. What prevents peace is not life itself. It is our commentary on life. The judgments, the labels, the endless narrative we construct. In Buddhist terms, this is papanka, mental proliferation, the act of turning a single stimulus into an entire conceptual storm. A sound becomes an annoyance, a glance becomes an insult, a delay becomes a disaster. The mind multiplies meaning until we are lost in interpretations. To reclaim peace, we must return to direct experience. The breath entering the nostrils, the body sitting on the cushion, the weight of feet touching the earth. These are not spiritual tricks. They are anchors. Each moment of mindfulness interrupts the stream of inner noise and brings us back to now. And in now, there is no past to regret, no future to fear, no self to improve. There is only being. This is the soil in which peace grows. Of course, the noise will return. It always does. The mind is conditioned by years of habit. But every time we notice, every time we gently guide it back, we weaken its grip, like a bell that rings more softly with each passing echo. This is the essence of Buddhist training, not to silence the mind forever, but to no longer be enslaved by it. Thich Nhat Hanh once wrote that we are not victims of our thoughts, but caretakers of our inner garden. If we water seeds of anger, fear, and restlessness, they will grow. But if we water seeds of understanding, patience, and presence, they too will flourish. What blooms in the mind depends on what we nurture. So how do we stop the inner noise? Not through violence, not by suppressing or escaping, but by listening so deeply that the mind begins to listen too. When we sit with ourselves, not as a judge, but as a friend, something softens. The inner voice becomes less harsh. The silence grows thicker. The breath grows deeper. And from that silence, a different voice may arise, not the voice of the ego, but the voice of knowing. The knowing that this moment is enough, that you are enough, that peace was never lost, only unheard beneath the noise. The monks who walked barefoot at dawn understood this. They were not escaping the world, but entering it more completely. With each step, they touched the earth. With each breath, they returned to life, not because their minds were empty, but because they had learned to see through the noise. And perhaps, if we too begin to sit in the quiet hours of our own day, not asking for peace, but simply listening, we will hear it waiting, not in a temple or a distant retreat, but right here, between the thoughts, beneath the worry, behind the next breath, waiting, not to be found, but to be heard. 3. The clinging self. The I who wants peace is the problem. In the stillness of a forest monastery in Myanmar, an old monk told a story to a group of visiting lay practitioners. A man, he said, stood by the edge of a vast lake, trying to scoop moonlight into a bowl. No matter how carefully he moved, the reflection scattered. He thought the bowl was too small, so he fetched a larger one. He thought the night wasn't dark enough, so he waited for clouds. Nothing worked. The moon was there, shining brightly, but unreachable as long as he tried to possess it. This, the monk whispered, is what most people do with peace. They try to hold it, define it, claim it as mine. But peace, like moonlight on water, cannot be possessed. The very act of grasping disturbs its presence. In the pursuit of inner peace, the most stubborn obstacle is not the external world, or even our own thoughts. It is the subtle and persistent idea of self, the I that desires, the me that seeks, the mind that clings. We search for calm, but the one searching is precisely what obscures it. The problem isn't just that we want peace, it's that we want peace for me. Buddhism does not deny the self in a nihilistic sense. Rather, it invites a deep inquiry into its nature. What is this I that wants peace? Where does it reside? Is it in the body, the thoughts, the memories? Can it be found, held, defined? Or is it a shifting process, a construction, like a flame flickering in the wind? The Buddha taught anonymous non-self as one of the three characteristics of all conditioned things. He urged his followers to examine experience and see that what we call self is not a fixed essence, but a bundle of aggregates, form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These arise and pass away. None are stable. None are truly mine. When clung to, they lead to suffering. When released, they open the door to freedom. Yet this teaching is not merely philosophical. It is profoundly practical. Imagine sitting in meditation, and a thought arises. I need to be more peaceful. On the surface, it seems harmless, even spiritual. But look closer. Who is the I speaking? Who decides what peace should feel like? Who measures the moment and finds it lacking? This I is not innocent. It is the judge, the comparer, the critic. It sneaks into practice dressed in robes, whispering that peace is something to be achieved, earned, controlled. And in doing so, it tightens the grip. It builds another layer of resistance, another condition for contentment. Thich Nhat Hanh once wrote, "Peace is already present. We need only to be in touch with it." But to be in touch with peace, we must first loosen the identity that insists it must be the one to receive it. We must see that the I who wants peace is not a solid entity, but a mental formation, habitual, conditioned, and ultimately empty. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha instructed practitioners to observe the body in the body, feelings in the feelings, and mind in the mind, without clinging. This final clause, without clinging, is key. It reveals that the goal is not to eradicate experience, but to stop appropriating it. When we experience anger, sadness, or fear, the suffering deepens when we say, "My anger, my sadness." But what if anger is just anger, fear just fear, a passing weather pattern in the sky of awareness? The clinging self insists on ownership. It says, "This is happening to me." But when we sit quietly and look, we begin to see that everything, thoughts, sensations, even the sense of self, comes and goes on its own. We are not pushing these things into existence. They arrive, linger, dissolve. What if peace is not about managing these waves, but about recognizing the ocean underneath. There's a story in the Pali Canon of a monk who approached the Buddha in frustration. "I meditate every day," he said. "I restrain my senses. I live mindfully. But still, I feel unsettled. Why can't I find peace?" The Buddha answered, "Because you are still clinging to the idea of yourself as a meditator, in seeking to be the one who is peaceful." The monk had unknowingly constructed another layer of identity, and with it, more suffering. This is the paradox. The more we try to be someone who is peaceful, the more distant peace becomes. True calm is not a quality possessed by a self, but the absence of self-centered striving. It is the space that opens when the I no longer demands to be at the center of experience. In the Mahayana tradition, the Bodhisattva path offers a vision of practice free from self-concern. The Bodhisattva seeks awakening not for me, but for all beings. Even this aspiration, when deeply understood, dismantles the centrality of ego. There is no my enlightenment, only the natural flowering of compassion when the walls of separation dissolve. To touch this kind of peace requires courage, because letting go of the clinging self feels like a kind of death. We are so accustomed to defining ourselves by achievements, traumas, opinions, even spiritual progress, that to release identity feels like losing something vital. But what we lose is not our true nature. It is the prison we mistook for a home. In the quiet of meditation, this release does not happen all at once. It begins subtly. The I fades into background. The breath becomes just breath. The body just body. The watcher dissolves into the watching. For a moment, there is no one doing anything. Just this, alive, luminous, complete. And then the mind returns, whispering again, "How long will this last? Am I doing it right? Can I keep it?" The self reasserts itself, claiming experience, fearing loss. But now, we can smile. We see the pattern. And with kindness, we return to presence, not to become someone better, but to remember there is no one to become. This is the hidden grace of the path that even our delusion can teach us. Even the clinging self, when seen clearly, becomes a doorway, not an enemy to fight, but a teacher to bow to. Each time we recognize it, we are invited to let go a little more, to soften, to rest. In the end, the peace we seek is not found by constructing a better version of self, but by seeing through the illusion of self altogether, not as a philosophy, but as a lived reality, a moment in which the mirror is so clean, it reflects only the sky. The old monk in the forest finished his story. He looked at the group and smiled gently. "The moon was never in the bowl," he said. "It was always in the sky. But to see it clearly, we must stop stirring the water." In the same way, to know peace, we must stop believing in the one who needs to possess it. Not because we are unworthy, but because there is no possessor, only peace, already here, waiting, beneath the grasp, beneath the name, beneath the eye that keeps reaching. 4. The stillness of now. Why peace is only ever found in the present. A dragonfly hovers over a still lotus pond in the early morning light. Its wings move too fast for the eye to track, but the water below reflects everything with perfect clarity. There is no wind, no ripple, only presence. Everything belongs. The sky, the insect, the silence. For a moment, nothing is missing. To an untrained mind, this scene may seem incidental, even mundane, But to the eyes of one who sees deeply, it is a complete teaching. The present moment, this one, here, is the only place where peace has ever lived. Not in the future we try to construct, not in the past we long to repair. Only here, only now. And yet, almost no one lives here. From childhood, we are taught to leave the present behind. We're told to plan, prepare, worry, strive. We measure our value in what we achieve later, or what we've suffered before. We carry unfinished conversations from yesterday, and we rehearse victories or losses that may never arrive. Even our joys are tempered by projections. Will this last? How can I keep it? As a result, the present moment becomes a hallway, something to pass through on the way to somewhere better. But in Buddhism, the present is not a hallway. It is home. The Buddha taught that the cause of suffering is craving, tanha, a thirst that drags us toward imagined futures or clutches desperately at fading pasts. But what lies beneath craving is something more insidious: our inability to fully rest in what is here. A mind lost in time cannot know peace, because peace is not a future achievement. It is the ground beneath every step we actually take. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha instructed, when walking, know that you're walking. When standing, know that you are standing. This may seem overly simple, even primitive, to a mind trained to multitask. But this is the radical nature of a mindfulness. It calls us out of abstraction and into the vivid texture of reality. Try it now. Feel the breath entering your body, not as a concept, not as an idea, but as a living, tactile sensation. Notice the air moving in through your nostrils, the subtle expansion of your chest, the warmth of life itself flowing into you. This is not theory. This is now. And here, in this simple act of attention, is a doorway. On the other side is stillness. Not because you built it, but because you stopped chasing elsewhere. Stillness is not silence. Stillness is not inactivity. Stillness is the full presence of awareness, undistracted by time. It is when we no longer ask, what next, or what if, but instead return, again and again, to what is. And what is, when truly seen, is enough. Many spiritual seekers miss this entirely. They confuse peace with a particular feeling: serenity, euphoria, tranquility. They chase experiences, meditate for outcomes, or try to capture stillness like a photograph. But stillness is not a feeling. It is a way of being. It does not require silence. It does not require comfort. It only requires now. Even pain, when met fully in the present, softens its grip. Even fear, when observed directly, loses its sting. It is not the sensations that hurt us. It is the resistance born from mentally fleeing them, projecting them forward, imagining their permanence, building a story around their existence. But when we stay, simply stay, the story dissolves, and what remains is just this: a moment, alive, naked, bearable. Thich Nhat Hanh once described washing the dishes as a sacred act. If you wash the dishes to be done with them, you're not really alive while washing. But if you wash the dishes just to wash the dishes, you're in touch with the miracle of presence. The warm water, the smooth surface, the body moving in harmony. In that moment, washing becomes a form of prayer, and peace arises, not because of what you are doing, but because of how you are being. Modern life, however, teaches the opposite. We are conditioned to perform, to accelerate, to escape the present in favor of imagined destinations. Entire industries are built on the promise of what's next. Faster delivery, better results, constant stimulation. In this noise, the stillness of now is drowned out, not by violence, but by distraction. And the price we pay is profound. Anxiety lives in the future. Regret lives in the past. But peace is here, always, waiting in the background of each breath, each step, each heartbeat. Not passive, not weak, but steady, anchored, real, like the earth beneath your feet. To practice mindfulness is not to manipulate experience. It is to trust in the completeness of now. And this trust, once cultivated, becomes unshakable. Even when emotions rise, even when the world shakes. Because the practitioner knows the only true refuge is presence. There's a story from the Zen tradition. A student asks the master, "How can I enter Zen?" The master responds, "Do you hear the sound of that stream?" The student listens. "Yes," he says. "Enter there." The master replies, "This story is not about streams. It is about attention. Wherever you are, whatever is unfolding, the doorway to peace is already open. Not in thoughts about the moment, but in the raw immediacy of the moment itself. The smell of rain, the hum of electricity, the way sunlight slants through a window. These are not distractions. These are the path. But the mind resists. It says, "This is boring. This is not enough." It craves complexity, novelty, drama, and so it drags us back into time, into plans, regrets, fantasies. Each time we follow, we leave now. And each time we leave now, we leave peace. So how do we return? Not by force, not by escaping thought, but by remembering. Remembering to breathe, remembering to feel, remembering to come back. Not once, but 1,000 times a day. Each time you return, the present welcomes you with no conditions. It asks nothing of you. It waits, patient, vast, unimpressed by your failures or accomplishments, because it knows you are already whole. In this wholeness, stillness is not something you add. It is something you uncover. A lake beneath the fog, a bell beneath the noise, a home beneath the wandering. The dragonfly still hovers above the lotus pond. Its wings shimmer in the morning light. The world, in its perfect imperfection, continues to unfold. But something has changed. Not in the world. In the one who sees it, the rush has slowed. The breath has deepened. The mind, if only for a moment, is here. And in that here, nothing is missing. Peace, at last. Not as a promise, but as a presence. Not as something to hold, but as something to be. Now. Only now. 5. The peace beyond peace. When you stop dividing life. A storm is breaking over the highlands. Gray clouds drift like slow giants above a jagged mountain ridge, their bellies swollen with thunder. Below, the trees stand unmoved, their roots sunk deep into dark earth, their branches swaying with neither resistance nor surrender. Rain begins to fall, not gently, but with the certainty of gravity. And still, nothing seems afraid. In this wild, unfiltered moment, there is no question of what should be. The sky does not ask whether it should be blue. The trees do not argue with the wind. The storm does not resist itself, and because of that, a strange calm settles over the land, one not despite the storm, but within it. This is peace beyond peace, not a fragile stillness dependent on external silence, not a moment of quiet that lasts only as long as conditions remain favorable, but a deeper, unshakable presence that appears when we stop dividing life. The mind, conditioned as it is, does not naturally dwell here. It prefers separation. It draws lines between right and wrong, joy and sorrow, sacred and mundane, me and you. It creates a map where life must be navigated through control, judgment, and preference. And while this map gives the illusion of safety, it also breeds suffering, because every line drawn is a gate locked, every division is a denial, and every time we say, "This should not be," we exile ourselves from the peace that already is. In Buddhist insight, this tendency of the mind is known as vibhaja, the slicing apart of experience. While analysis and discernment have their role, they often become habitual fragmentation. We name things, label them, assign them meaning. We say, "This is pain. I don't want it. This is pleasure. I need more of it." And in doing so, we enter the endless chase, running from one side of life while clinging to the other. But life is not made of sides. It is made of wholeness. A breath includes both inhale and exhale. A wave includes both crest and crash. A day includes both sunlight and shadow. So too with peace. It cannot be found by excluding suffering, nor by assembling only the pleasing parts of existence. True peace is not the opposite of conflict. It is the field in which all things are allowed to arise and pass without resistance. Imagine a river. Its waters flow through valleys and over rocks, carrying leaves and debris, embracing still pools and whitewater rapids alike. The river does not reject any part of itself. It does not say, "I will only be river when I am smooth." It is river in all its expressions. In this way, peace beyond peace is not a state of perfection. It is the acceptance of the whole flow. This acceptance is not passive. It is not resignation or defeat. It is a profound intimacy with reality, a willingness to see clearly, without needing to fix or escape. The Buddha spoke of this as equanimity, a balanced mind that does not cling to pleasure or push away pain. Such a mind is not numb. It is spacious. It holds joy and grief without being overwhelmed by either. But to arrive at this kind of peace, we must begin by noticing how often we divide, how often we call some moments sacred and others ordinary, how often we love our thoughts, but hate our bodies, how often we say, "I will be peaceful when this is over," not realizing that this is life. We divide ourselves not just from experience, but from our own being. We think of the body as separate from the mind, the heart as separate from logic, the spiritual as separate from the everyday. And yet, no bird sings in categories. No tree grows by compartment. The unity we long for is already here, lost only in the thinking that fractures it. Meditation, when approached with openness, begins to reveal this unity. At first, we may sit seeking calm, but over time, something deeper is uncovered. We see that the breath, the thoughts, the emotions are not separate events. They are threads of the same tapestry. A feeling arises, not as an intruder, but as part of the dance. We begin to soften. We begin to stop editing the moment. And in this stopping, something extraordinary appears. Not peace as the absence of disturbance, but peace as the presence of truth. The truth that nothing is out of place. Even this restlessness, even this doubt, even this longing, all are part of the unfolding. When we stop dividing life, we stop standing apart from it. The observer merges with the observed. The seeker dissolves into the seeking. What remains is awareness, vast, compassionate, and awake. There is a moment during a walking meditation when the mind becomes quiet enough that the sound of a single bird can feel like a sermon. The crunch of a leaf beneath the foot, the breeze brushing against the cheek, the heartbeat echoing in the chest. Each becomes an invitation to dwell more deeply in now. Not because these things are special, but because we are no longer elsewhere. We have returned, not to a place, but to presence itself. And presence is never divided. It does not say, "This breath is worthy. That one is not." It does not measure beauty or success. It simply is, whole, undivided, unafraid. In this presence, the usual boundaries dissolve. The wind through the trees is not separate from the lungs that inhale it. The pain in the knee is not separate from the compassion that holds it. The person we thought we were is no longer the fixed center of the story, but one wave in the great ocean of unfolding life. This is not philosophy. This is experience. And experience, when undivided, is peace, even in the midst of noise, even in the face of uncertainty, even as the storm continues to move across the sky. To live this way requires practice, not in the sense of repetition, but in the sense of remembering again and again that there is nowhere to go, nothing to fix, no separate self to purify before life begins. Each breath is the temple, each sensation the teaching, each moment the doorway. We do not need to divide our lives into spiritual and mundane, peaceful and chaotic, worthy and unworthy. We need only to stop dividing at all, to let the whole symphony of being rise and fall within us, and to listen not with judgment, but with reverence. The storm has passed now. The clouds scatter like fading thoughts, revealing a sky that was never truly gone. The trees, wet and glistening, stand exactly where they were, unchanged, yet transformed in the eyes of the one who now sees more clearly. Peace was never elsewhere. It was never something to create, find, or hold. It was here, beneath the story of separation, waiting, not to be won, but to be remembered. So perhaps the question was never, how do I find peace? But rather, what am I still clinging to that keeps me from seeing it? Maybe peace isn't waiting at the end of effort, but beneath the layers of resistance. Maybe it's not a reward for doing more, but a quiet presence revealed when we stop trying to escape this moment. You don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to become anyone else. You only need to come home, to this breath, this step, this now. Because the truth is, peace isn't something we find. It's what we remember when we stop forgetting who we truly are. Thank you for listening. If today's story touched something in you, I invite you to pause for a moment longer, just to be with yourself, fully, without needing to change anything. And if you'd like to journey deeper into wisdom, reflection, and presence, subscribe to Trandy Wisdom and share this space with those who may also be searching for home. Until next time, may you walk gently, may you breathe fully, and may you discover the stillness that was never far away. Welcome back, always, to Trandy Wisdom, where every story is profoundly true.